recently, somebody in my life who shall go unnamed, it's Daniel, I don't know why I said that, gave the incredibly good idea to me that I somehow hadn't thought of previously to rank and explain all of the arcs in certain anime. Now, more specifically, Danny wants me to rank and explain all the arcs in Naruto, but there's 23 canon arcs in Naruto. I think it's 5 in OG and then 17 in Shippuden, which would be 22. I can't do math. And unfortunately, when you make 8 YouTube videos a week, it's kind of hard to find the time to do a video where you rank and explain 22 arcs, because that's the kind of thing that takes a whole workday. And when you usually, on most workdays, have to try and complete 2 YouTube videos, you don't have time to burn an entire day on 1 YouTube video. That's math I can do. There's also the fact that, and this is gonna blow some people's minds, that I don't remember everything that happens in every single arc in Naruto. Listen, I remember the majority of what happens in Naruto, but to do a lot of research on Naruto, sometimes I gotta do some rereading. There's a couple of arcs in there that aren't super memorable. There's also 700 chapters. So I figured I would dip my toe into the world of ranking and explaining all the arcs in certain anime. I would do it with my favorite anime slash manga of all time that's substantially shorter than Naruto. I mean, not substantially, but it is shorter. Hunter x Hunter. Because while I may not remember everything that's happened in Naruto, boy oh boy, do I remember everything that's happened in Hunter x Hunter. Mostly because I've watched Hunter x Hunter front to back way more times than I've watched Naruto. I think I'm on watch 7 of Hunter x Hunter. And on top of all of this, Hunter x Hunter fortunately doesn't have that many arcs. It's kind of like Bleach in that regard, where there's just a couple of key long arcs. And while there's a couple of Zou slash Sabaody Archipelago type arcs in there that set up the big arcs, even those little arcs are a lot of fun. So when it comes down to ranking and explaining all the arcs in a certain show, boy oh boy, is Hunter x Hunter easier than Naruto. So we'll use this video as a test, and if this video does well, then we'll sink an entire day into ranking and explaining all 22 arcs in Naruto. Listen, I know it would do well. I know that for a fact. It's just, videos can be like an hour long. Listen, don't get it twisted. I love my job, but at a certain point with one video taking 8 hours, you're just like, I need this to be over. But enough about Nick complaining and giving you a behind the scenes on what it's like to be an anime YouTuber. Let's get into today's video, because today we're ranking and explaining all of the arcs in Nick's favorite anime and manga, Hunter x Hunter. Well, before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me do some content with the person who recommended that I do these kinds of videos, guys, go ahead and watch my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happens in anime. This week, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to look like you rank anime arcs in your own free time, guys, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, Nick, your favorite anime slash manga of all time, Hunter x Hunter. How on God's green earth are you gonna find the will to say that it has a worst arc? I mean, you've multiple times throughout your life said that Hunter x Hunter, if it gets an ending, will be the greatest piece of literature ever created. How could there be a worst arc? Well, there is. If I'm being entirely real with you, there's 1 to 2 arcs in Hunter x Hunter that just aren't all that good. However, fortunately, in the case of Hunter x Hunter, none of the arcs that aren't all that good are long arcs. In fact, it's usually the short, truncated setup arcs for the other big arcs that are about to happen that are the bad arcs in Hunter x Hunter. So if you can grit your teeth through 9 episodes, that bad arc is behind you. Now, I wish I could say that was the scenario for other popular anime. Looking directly at you, Punk Hazard, that arc had no business being 60 episodes long.
Oh, Nick, but the Yeti brothers and the Will of D, and that's how we get to meet Caesar.
It could have been 15 episodes. Yeah, the 48 total hours I spent in Punk Hazard and Thriller Bark respectively are all better now, because in both of these arcs we got to see, oh, Luffy might be Joy Boy. And listen, I'm not just taking shots at One Piece. The War arc also could have been like 35 episodes. And don't even get me started on the Hueco Mundo slash Arankar arc. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, let's just have like one of the greatest arcs of all time in the Soul Society arc, and then followed up by 100 episodes of absolute nonsense. But Nick, the Ulquiorra fight. But Nick, the Grimchow fight.
Do you know how much mud you have to trudge through to get there? The short story of all this is read the manga. But unfortunately, when it comes down to Hunter x Hunter, the anime is a little bit better than the manga, at least the second rendition of the anime. Now, obviously, the entirety of the manga hasn't been adapted, but that's mostly because the current arc that we're in, the Succession Contest arc, isn't finished yet. And technically, the Succession Contest arc is the next big arc after the conclusion of the Chimera Ant arc. Because after the conclusion of the Chimera Ant arc, we have the arc that's coming in last place on this list, 13th Hunter Chairman Election arc. Now, this is technically the last arc of Hunter x Hunter's anime. And this is because when Hunter x Hunter's anime was wrapping up, there was barely barely any manga after this to adapt. And thus, since this is the arc that Gon meets his father Jing, the anime decided to use this as a natural stopping point. And honestly, it makes sense. Because after Gon meets Jing, not only has he accomplished his life's goal, and that's the main character of the story, accomplishing everything he's ever wanted to accomplish, but also, after this moment, Gon's no longer the MC, as it is loosely implied with the ending that Togashi recently released in case he dies before he ends the story, that Gon grows up to be a legendary hunter, which might imply that he gets his nen back. But so far as it currently stands in both the anime and the manga, Gon's got no nen and isn't in the story. Now, this arc really had the deck stacked against it. I mean, it's the arc that follows up the longest, most plot-heavy and intense arcs in all of Hunter x Hunter, the Chimera Ant arc. And tone-wise, it is a complete 180 from the Chimera Ant arc. With the Chimera Ants defeated and Netero dead, the 12 Zodiacs need to come together and elect a new leader of the Hunter Association. And while it is cool to meet the 12 Zodiacs, 12 of the most powerful hunters on Earth, this arc more serves as a way to introduce the 12 Zodiacs for the upcoming arcs. More specifically, the Succession Contest arc, as the majority of the 12 Zodiacs play a somewhat important role in the Succession Contest arc, and will continue assuming Hunter x Hunter's manga continues to play a pivotal role in the story in the Dark Continent, as once again, they are the most powerful, or at least the most useful hunters on Earth. And ironically, the least compelling part of this entire arc is the election of the next chairman. Well, it is cool to meet the 12 Zodiacs and have Leorio back in the story and see him uppercut Jing. This arc is kind of just a watered-down version of the early chapters of Death Note, as both Jing and Pariston are trying to outmaneuver each other with internal dialogues and trying to crack what the next move of the other is gonna be. And it's fine, but it doesn't match up to anything else that happens throughout the entirety of Hunter x Hunter's plot. In actuality, the most compelling part of this entire arc is the introduction of Aluka, and more specifically, Killua's relationship with Aluka. As on top of the 12 Zodiacs being introduced, we're introduced to the youngest sibling of the Zoldyck family, a child by the name of Aluka who has the ability to grant wishes, most likely because she shares a body with something known as an eye, which is one of the 5 calamities brought back from the Dark Continent through the 5 expeditions to the Dark Continent. And 1, being introduced to Aluka's powers was terrifying, but 2, it was really cool to see how much Killua cared for her. And Gon's touching reunion with Leorio when he comes back to life after using all of his nen to punch Pito's face in is one of the cuter and more touching moments in all of Hunter x Hunter. Not to mention that Gon traveling up the world tree to spend some time with his father and finally achieving what he's been trying to achieve for almost 300 chapters was incredible to see. But really, that's all this arc has going for it. It's got some big emotional payoff moments that have been brewing for 300 so chapters, but the weight of those emotional payoffs can be more attributed to the other arcs for setting up the circumstances. And thus, while this arc isn't bad, I would go rewatch it right now. It's the worst out of Hunter x Hunter's arcs. After the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc, coming up at number 7, we have the Zoldyck family arc. Now, this arc is referred to as an unofficial arc in the manga, as the entirety of the Zoldyck family arc in the manga is actually only 5 chapters. And therefore, a lot of what we see in the Zoldyck family arc in the anime technically never happens in the manga, but that doesn't make it filler. It's actually canon, as confirmed by Togashi himself. It's just that the anime fills out the arc a bit more, and for the better, I would say, because the importance of this arc is not to be understated. I know I'm putting it in second to last, but that doesn't mean I think it's bad. It's just short. See, the Zoldyck family arc, which is the first arc after 3 out of the big 4 get their hunter licenses, acts as a way to introduce Leorio, Kurapika, and Gon to just how big and scary the world can be, if only through the eyes of the microcosm that is the Zoldyck family mountain. See, there's no training arc in the beginning of Hunter x Hunter. This is unofficially really the first training arc in all of Hunter x Hunter, as the story simply starts with Gon catching the Lord of the Lake, going to take the Hunter exam, and really not struggling in the Hunter exam. I mean, sure, there's a couple of moments where Hisoka almost kills him and he gets all of his bones broken by a ninja, but this is genuinely the first time that we see Kurapika, Leorio, or Gon try to get stronger. And the context of why they're trying to get stronger is very interesting to me, because they're not trying to get stronger for a big tournament or to beat the final baddie. They need to get stronger simply to get into the Zoldyck mansion, fully displaying the insignificance of their strength against the grander design of the big scary world. But outside of showing us just how far Gon is willing to go for his friend Killua, we also get a look into Killua's relationship with his family, the Zoldicks, as when we first come to Killua during this arc, we see that he's being tortured by his brother, Miluki, who is undoubtedly the weakest out of all the Zoldicks, and thus Killua kind of treats him like that. On top of this, we realize that Miluki was put up to torturing his brother by Killua's mother, Kikyo, who he has a pretty abusive relationship with. See, it's revealed that Kikyo wants complete and total control over Killua because she believes that he's going to be the next greatest thing in the Zoldyck family, and thus she's terrified that Killua is going to get friends and become soft and not be a good assassin. But more than anything, this arc also gives us the moment of Gon cutting his eye so that he can pass Goto's coin test, Killua having a touching moment with his father Silva, and the introduction of one of the better characters in all of Hunter x Hunter, Canary, all over the course of 5 episodes. That's it. But since there's only 5 episodes in the anime and 5 chapters in the manga, they can't accomplish all that much. So me putting it at number 8 isn't because I don't like the arc, it's just because not that much happens. And in fact, as I'm looking at this list, genuinely, I might have ranked them on length, because coming up at number 6, we got the Hunter exam, which admittedly is one of the longer arcs in Hunter x Hunter. I mean, it's 21 episodes, and I think it's a very good 21 episodes. However, a lot of people talk about this arc like it's the worst thing that ever happened. And I'll admit, when it comes to the longer arcs in Hunter x Hunter, it's probably the least great. I'm not gonna call it bad, it's just the least great. And therefore, unfortunately, a lot of people see a really high barrier when it comes to entering Hunter x Hunter, because they think they have to grind their teeth through 21 episodes of the Hunter exam arc. Now, personally, I've never been in that camp. In fact, if I'm gonna rewatch any arc, it's usually the Hunter exam arc, because that's when things were still nice. The Hunter exam to me is like a blanket and a warm glass of milk. Bunch of friends, hanging out, taking a test, going to Killua are being 12-year-olds, not yet traumatized by 6-foot talking ants, homicidal bombers in video games, or pedophile clowns. It's the good old days. But objectively, when you put it up against a lot of the other arcs in Hunter x Hunter, it's not as good. And honestly, the real reason that I would say it's not as good as a lot of the other arcs is the first couple of episodes. See, I genuinely believe once the Hunter exam fully starts, this arc is as good as any other arc in Hunter x Hunter. However, in the lead up to the Hunter exam actually starting, and that is Gon and Kurapika and Leorio meeting on a boat leaving from Whale Island, everybody on the boat getting seasick, them not because they're the main characters, the introduction of the Kiriko, Gon being able to suss out which one is which, them not falling for the Kiriko's traps, that part where they have to like walk through a town and pass a bunch of tests, I nearly forgot that happened, and even up until they get out of the 100-kilometer run out of the tunnel. All of that is objectively kinda slow and kinda boring. And while we do have Gon and Killua meeting for the first time in the 100-kilometer long tunnel run, really it's not until Leorio, Kurapika, Killua, and Gon all split off from the main group trying to make their way through the deceiving swamp that Hunter x Hunter really starts to hit its stride. And I genuinely believe by the time that we get to the puzzle tower and the number snatching game, Hunter x Hunter is at full speed, as the puzzle tower not only gave us some of the greatest moments in the entire show, like Kurapika ripping a serial killer's heart out of his chest and then giving it back to him in a paper baggie, but also genuinely showed us for the first time how much of a badass Hisoka was, as right before Hisoka finishes in the puzzle tower, he finds himself in a battle against Togari, the knife throwing guy. And Togari's like, oh yeah, you defeated me last year, but now I've been mastering this knife throwing and catching technique, which Hisoka figures out in like 3 seconds and then cuts off Togari's head with his own knives. And then by the time we get to the number snatching game, things really kick it up a notch, as the story begins to revolve more and more around Hisoka as the main antagonist. I struggle to call Hisoka an antagonist because he's not really. Like, he's a bad guy, but he's not the bad guy, you know? But in the number snatching game, we get a battle royale in the Hunter exam that comes to its peak as Gon accidentally uses Zetsu to sneak up on Hisoka and snatch his number badge with his fishing pole. I think it's a really good arc, but unfortunately it starts a lot slower than a lot of the other arcs in Hunter x Hunter, so it's gonna be a little bit lower on this list. And this may be a controversial opinion, but it's gonna be lower than the next official arc that happens after the Hunter exam, which is the Heaven's Arena arc. Because coming in at number 5, we have the Heaven's Arena arc. Now this is another really short arc. This arc is only 10 episodes long, but it's an action-packed 10 episodes. See, this is really the first training arc. Well, obviously Gon, Leorio, and Kurapika did some strength training in the Zoldyck family arc. It's in this arc that we're introduced into the power system of the universe, which is Nen. But more importantly, we're introduced to the complexity that is the power system of this universe, which is Nen. As just in a couple of episodes, we see Gon and Killua rip their way through 190 floors of Heaven's Arena, making themselves a pretty considerable chunk of change. However, upon getting to the 200th floor of Heaven's Arena, Gon and Killua are confronted with the reality that the 200th floor is way different from the other 190. Because on the 200th floor, who else is waiting for them other than Hisoka? And while Hisoka is sitting there menacingly, stopping Killua and Gon from even advancing on the 200th floor, in a way, Hisoka is actually assisting the two boys here. See, Hisoka sees Killua and Gon ascending through the floors of Heaven Arena with little to no difficulty. However, Hisoka is fully aware that on the 200th floor, there are Nen users, and if Gon and Killua enter into combat against Nen users without knowing how to use Nen of their own, there's a fair chance they die, as the Nen users would be able to forcibly open their Nen nodes and probably have them leak aura until they die, as they would have no idea how to close their Nen nodes. Thus, Hisoka releases his deadly and dark red into a hallway to make sure that Gon and Killua can advance no further. And thus, in order to simply enter the 200th floor, Gon and Killua have to learn Nen. And that's exactly what they do. Specifically, they learn Nen from Wing. And it's revealed through the Nen testing type that Gon is an enhancer, the best all-around Nen type, and that Killua is a transmuter. And thus, this arc gives us the first real look into the scope that is the Hunter x Hunter universe. With what starts out as a story about a boy with a fishing rod is evolving into a universe with a vast and complex power system. And just like how the Zoldyck family arc showed Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio just how insignificant the amount of power that they had truly was in the grander scheme of the Hunter x Hunter universe, this arc serves as an incredible way for both Gon and Killua to truly understand what the top looks like. This is also the first instance where we get to see Killua step into a protector role for Gon, as Killua goes so far as to sneak into other contestants' rooms and threaten their lives if they show up to their match tomorrow against Gon. On top of this arc has two of the greatest fights we've seen in Hunter x Hunter. Hisoka versus Castro, which shows us a battle between two incredibly high-level Nen users and what that would look like, and way more importantly, Hisoka versus Gon, which has Gon paying back on his promise to punch Hisoka in the face. This arc may be short, but in 10 episodes, it accomplishes more than some anime's entire runs. So for that, it's gonna fall roughly in the middle of the pack. But since we're talking about Heaven's Arena, let's talk about the time the manga went back to Heaven's Arena, because coming up at number 4, we have the Succession Contest arc, also known as the arc that, if the manga continues to be published, will probably end up being the longest arc in the history of Hunter x Hunter. Because as it currently stands, I believe we're 51 chapters into the Succession Contest arc, and I don't even think we're halfway through. Now, the Khmer Ant arc was 133 chapters long, so beating that would be a little difficult. But when it comes to starting out strong, no arc starts out stronger than the Succession Contest arc. And also, there isn't another arc in Hunter x Hunter whose title I have as much trouble saying as the Succession Contest arc. So this arc revolves around the story switching from Gon to Kurapika in terms of MCs, the geopolitical workings of the entire Hunter x Hunter world, and the Kakin Empire's king trying to find a successor amongst all of his princes. It doesn't start off about any of that. No, this arc starts off with probably the best 6-chapter run in the entirety of Hunter x Hunter's manga, and that is Hisoka versus the Phantom Troop. See, pretty much the first thing that happens in this arc is that Hisoka decides, you know what, we're killing the Phantom Troop, and thus Hisoka begins finding one by one individual Phantom Troop members and killing them brutally. Because as we all know, Hisoka's key motivation in anything he does is to fight strong opponents. And now that the Phantom Troop had put a bounty on his head, as it was revealed that he was a fake member of the troop and he was only joining them to get closer to Crollo, Hisoka, instead of running, decides to put a mark on all of the members of the Phantom Troop. However, Hisoka can only get his grubby hands on so many members of the troop before his titular battle that kicks off this arc. And that battle is against none other than Crollo, who has since gotten his Nen back. And since Hisoka, by beating Castro, became a floor master in Heaven's Arena, he's able to challenge any other floor master. And Crollo is apparently a floor master. And thus Hisoka decides to challenge Crollo to an all-out death match. And boy, oh boy, is this a death match? Not only are Crollo and Hisoka trying to kill each other, but there's also a full stadium of people watching Hisoka and Crollo try to kill each other. And that was not a good idea, as there is a literal moment in this fight where Hisoka starts using decapitated skulls as a weapon against Crollo. Yeah, I could have told you watching a battle between the two most murderous people on this planet in an open-air arena wasn't a great idea as a spectator. Seems like the kind of thing you do a pay-per-view for. And if this fight is ever animated, trust me when I say it will be the greatest fight in the history of Hunter x Hunter. Better than Netero versus Meruem, better than Gon versus Pito, if you could even really call that a fight. And this battle ends in an incredibly gory and satisfying way that sets up the continuation of the Succession Contest arc, and more specifically why Hisoka and the Phantom Troop are so heavily involved in it.
But Nick, if this arc has the greatest fight in the history of Hunter x Hunter, why is the Succession Contest arc so low?
Well, two reasons. One, I've already told you that I do believe Hunter x Hunter's anime is a little bit better than its manga. And that's mostly because the exposition and info dump that comes along through the medium of the anime is a lot easier to consume than through the medium of the manga. For some reason, it's easier for me to understand things when they're being told to me, not when I'm reading them. And boy, oh boy, is the Succession Contest arc kind of convoluted. See, here's the problem with the Succession Contest arc. It's good. It is good on this ship, and the entire plot revolves around the Kakin Empire. I mean, that's not necessarily true. There are definitely moments where we cut back to the Phantom Troop, but the Phantom Troop is also battling against people who have been given powers by all the members of the Kakin Empire, and the Phantom Troop's trying to find Hisoka. Hisoka's hiding. Hisoka just got revealed, and every single one of the princes in the Kakin Empire has a thing known as a Nen Beast, who all have incredibly specific, interesting, and detailed powers, of which our main character Kurapika doesn't even necessarily fully understand. That is to say that there's princes in the Kakin Empire who don't necessarily understand how their Nen Beast works. And thus the succession contest arc is kind of like if you made the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc 50-ish chapters already. And while there are a lot of cool characters that have been introduced, like Tessie Erdnich, and there are a lot of really cool abilities that tie into how Nen works within the universe, it's a lot of information. And therefore, probably because it hasn't been animated yet, that's if it ever will be animated, it's hard to put it higher than a lot of these arcs that have been animated. Specifically, it's hard to put it above any of the big 3 arcs. Now, when I say the big 3 arcs of Hunter x Hunter, I think you all know what I'm talking about. Because really, when it comes down to it, there's only 3 important arcs in Hunter x Hunter. And those would be York New City, Greed Island, and Chimera Ant Arc in chronological order. That's because when it comes to animated arcs, these are the 3 longest arcs. And with that length comes importance, incredible battles, scale, and just magnificence. But by far and away, of the big 3 arcs, the least great is Greed Island, which might be an unpopular opinion because Greed Island is technically an isekai section of Hunter x Hunter, and that's a lot of people's bag. And I love Greed Island. In fact, I lied earlier when I said I rewatched the Hunter exam arc. Honestly, I rewatched the Greed Island arc because the Greed Island arc is like if the Hunter exam arc had stakes. Like, obviously there is stakes in the Hunter exam arc, but you know they're all gonna pass. The Great Island arc takes place directly after the York New City arc, and thus the Phantom Troop, one of the greatest parts of Hunter x Hunter, get to play a large role in this arc. And any arc where the Phantom Troop gets to play a large part is going to inherently, just by their sheer presence, be one of the better arcs in Hunter x Hunter. That's why they're in every arc. They're awesome. And probably the key reason that Greed Island is in the bottom of the big 3 arcs for me is because it's the arc that has the least Phantom Troop out of all of the big 3 arcs. On top of this, Greed Island as an arc is also definitely heavy on the training aspects. See, because while Gon and Killua were introduced to the concept of Nen in Heaven's Arena, they truly didn't begin to understand how vast and deep the world of Nen was until Greed Island, and more specifically until they met Bisky, who's able to teach them things like Gyo and Ko and Ren and Ken, and thus Gon and Killua are able to master these techniques as fast as humanly possible because they're both boy geniuses, and then use these techniques against, albeit the least inspiring antagonist in all of Hunter x Hunter, the Bomber Squad. However, the individual battles that Bisky, Killua, and Gon all get at the end of Greed Island are incredible, and it's shown in Gon's battle against Genthru that he'll really do anything to win. Thus, Greed Island is really the first time that we get a peek into just how insane Gon is. On top of this, even though some people don't like Greed Island, I guess I'm about to do my Punk Hazard / Thriller Bark bit here, but there are so many possible theories that spin out of Greed Island. Like the fact that there's a card in Greed Island that makes you pregnant if you hold on to it for 30 days, and thus people believe that Jing is both Gon's mother and father. So while out of the big 3 arcs, Greed Island is definitely the weakest, seeing Hunter x Hunter do a card captor Sakura moment is always kind of fun. And shout out to Bisky, one of my favorite characters in anime. Also, you're lying to yourself if you think there's a better dodgeball moment in all of television history than Gon, Killua, and Hisoka all coming together to catch Razor's fastball. Oh, Nick, there's a movie called Dodgeball. It's good. It's not Hunter x Hunter good. Now, just like with the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc, this arc unfortunately also suffers from the arc before it was Incredible-itis, as the arc before the Greed Island arc is the York New City arc, which is a lot of people's best arc in anime, period, not just Hunter x Hunter. And boy, oh boy, can I not blame you. The York New City arc, for all intents and purposes, is perfect, as this arc revolves around the Mafia trying to run their yearly auction, where they sell everything from rare body parts to copies of Greed Island. However, the York New City arc acts as our introduction to the Phantom Troop. And what's really interesting about this is that it's an introduction to the Phantom Troop through the eyes of all of the most important characters in the story simultaneously, as Kurapika is able to confront the Phantom Troop for the first time since acquiring his Nen techniques by becoming a guard of one of the Mafia Don's daughters, who wants to go to the auction to buy rare human parts. And thus in this arc, not only do we get incredible Phantom Troop moments, like Franklin shooting down an entire room of mafiosos with his finger guns, or Shizuku using Blinky to suck up the entire scene, we get to see Phaeton and Finks cutting through armed mafiosos like a hot knife through butter, and we get to see Krollo versus Silva and Zeno Zoldyck simultaneously. And it's revealed that Krollo is so powerful that Zeno Zoldyck was willing to end his own life so that Silva could get a killing blow on it. On top of all of this, there's a crazy reveal at the end that Krollo hired Illumi to take out the 10 most powerful members of the Mafia, thus pretty much absolving all murder contracts on Krollo. And all of this happens after Kurapika brings a shovel to the battle against Ugavit. And once again, maybe more importantly than anything, this arc serves as a way for Gon and Killua to see that there are people in this world who are way out of their league. As Gon and Killua are captured by the Phantom Troop, I believe 3 times, and every single time they have to struggle mightily to escape. However, once again, this arc shows us just how powerful Gon might be, as Gon is able to defeat both Shizuku and Nobunaga in an arm wrestling match. Listen, this is the arc with the most Phantom Troop, and therefore, this arc is gonna be high on anybody's list because every single member of the Phantom Troop is incredible. For Bono Lenov, I mean, like, his abilities are cool, like he can literally summon Saturn, but who cares about Bono Lenov? Everybody else, though, pretty cool. But unfortunately, all the Phantom Troop in the world could not touch the greatest arc in anime history, not just Hunter x Hunter, the Chimera Ant arc.
Oh, Nick, the Chimera Ant arc's too long. They spent 3 episodes running up a staircase.
Listen, if you don't enjoy the Chimera Ant arc, I don't know what to tell you. It is possibly one of the greatest storytelling moments in written history. Yeah, it's 133 chapters long. I wish it was 233 chapters long.
Oh, Nick, I don't have time to watch an 80-episode arc.
Yes, you do. Whole Cake Island, an arc about saving Sanji from a wedding, is 95 episodes long. Oh, Nick, so much more happens on Whole Cake Island. Does it? Does it? Yes. Is the beginning of the Chimera Ant arc slower than the end? Absolutely. That's called rising action. In the beginning of the Chimera Ant arc, we're introduced to Kite, the man who set Gon on the correct path of life. Jing's original student, the first iteration of Gon, as Kite, just like Gon, was assigned the task of finding Jing. But Gon and Killua, as they're sent to Kite, stumble upon Kite researching Chimera Ants, a Class B threat animal, possibly from the Dark Continent. And slowly with time, Kite takes them under his wing, introducing them to his team of researchers who are stumbled upon a Chimera Ant leg that would mean there's a Chimera Ant out there that's achieved 6 feet in height. And it's at this point that we cut to the Chimera Ant Queen, who is eating everything she can to give birth to a new generation of Chimera Ants. And as these Chimera Ants raise cities in East Gorto, essentially North Korea, because of the lack of infrastructure in this country, because of the totalitarian dictator that they have, these villagers living relatively simple and peaceful lives are being destroyed by Chimera Ants with no possibility of outside help, outside of the underground criminal network that runs through East Gorto, run by a king by the name of Gyro, who possibly could play into the storyline later, as there's so many theories about who Gyro really is. And as time progresses and the threat of the Chimera Ants becomes more and more real, with the king and his royal guard being born, the Hunter Association has to send out its strongest possible hunters, like Knuckle and Nove and Netero, to battle against these monstrosities. And here's the thing. While some of them are monstrosities, not all are. See, well, Pito and the rest of the Royal Guard are monstrosities. Monstrosities that kill indiscriminately and kill people like Kite, which sends Gon into the downward spiral that would turn him into a monster. The king, the strongest out of all of the Chimera Ants, isn't a monster. Well, he starts as a monster, but he doesn't stay that way. And as the arc progresses, we see this monster born into the world to consume it whole, slowly but surely become a human. While on the other hand, we see this boy born into the world to adventure and help, slowly but surely become a monster. And thus Meruem, as he spends more and more time with Komogi, switches his idea on what he wants to do with the world. And it's as Meruem grows through the medium of spending time with Komogi that he realizes that humans are truly beautiful things, and that they shouldn't be used as meat, but instead they should all come together and harness their true actual power. However, as Meruem is spouting out this incredibly altruistic ideology, the head of the Hunter Association, supposedly the best good guy in all of the world, kills him with a nuclear bomb he had implanted in his own heart. And Netero's final lines to this altruistic king were, never underestimate the bottomless malice within the human heart, perfectly depicting the darkness, ingenuity, and stubbornness of the human race. And meanwhile, while Netero was giving his life to make sure the power balance wouldn't switch to Meruem, Gon gives up everything to make sure he can exact revenge on Kite's killer. Not to mention the myriad of other incredible fights that we have throughout this arc, like Killua versus Yuppie, Moral versus Shiapoof, Shoot Knuckle versus Yuppie. This arc introduced so much and told one of the greatest stories ever told, all with being capped off with one of the greatest rage moments in all of anime, Gon turning into his adult form, and one of the greatest fights in anime history, Netero versus Meruem. This arc, to me, is objectively perfect. And while I said York New City is objectively perfect, Chimera Ant arc is just a little bit more so. But what do you guys think? What are your favorite arcs in Hunter x Hunter? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell.
Oh, Nick, you didn't talk about the Dark Continent arc.
It's 9 chapters long and it's not animated yet, okay? It was fine.